once again, everybody, and thank you for joining me in the Bettor's Box. This is BangTheBook.com's MLB betting podcast for Thursday, March 28th. It is opening day. Happy opening day, everybody. Happy opening day here for the return of the Bettor's Box. We'll be doing this Mondays and Thursdays into the month of August. Once we get back into the swing of things with football season, we'll see what happens at that point in time. But good to be back with you on the air here. This is my standalone MLB solo betting podcast. So if you're looking for any guests, you're going to find them here on this segment. But once again, be doing these Monday and Thursday, typically somewhere in the 30 to 45 minute range. So a little bit shorter than our full shows, just depends on how much I have to talk about and all that type of thing. Obviously, still doing this mobile here, and my daily picks and tips piece up over at BangTheBook.com for today. A couple picks and a stronger lean in that article. Talking about more games in that article than I've gotten hours of sleep over the last 3 days here out in Las Vegas, making the rounds, doing the Wager Talk stuff. By the way, if you haven't seen that Wager Talk stuff yet, I actually haven't watched the videos myself. A little bit embarrassed and anxious to watch those, but you get a chance to check them out. You can find those over on Wager Talk's page. You can find them. They were retweeted by our Bang the Book Twitter account. Did some videos for them here this week for baseball. Also, a look at LSU and Michigan State. Did the Wager Talk podcast, Las Vegas Sportsline with Dave Koken earlier on in the week. May have one more appearance here this week. Not confirmed yet. Don't want to let the cat out of the bag with that. But once that is confirmed, you'll definitely know if you follow me on Twitter at Skating Tripods, or I'm sure if you follow at Bang the Book. A couple of things I want to mention here before we dive into the Major League Baseball side of everything. We'll do some one-off segments here over the spring and summer with Kentucky Derby, Masters, college football season win totals, maybe some NBA playoff stuff. We'll still keep Bang the Book Radio going. It won't be a daily thing, not the way that we've been doing it since back in August. Won't have 2 guests per day and full shows every day, but we'll still have a lot of Bang the Book Radio content, so make sure you keep it tuned right here. Make sure you're checking out Kyle Hunter's daily college basketball picks for as long as the college hoop season is still going. Also, Parker Michaels' NHL picks, which will run through the playoffs. We still cover NBA, golf, NASCAR, UFC, soccer, tennis. We'll do college football and NFL over the summer here as well. Over at BangTheBook.com, we are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Let's go ahead and dive in here. The Bettor's Box. If you want the notes for the Bettor's Box, you can email me, Adam at BangTheBook.com. It's the best way to get on the mailing list here for these. Probably in your best interest, because I talk about a lot of analytics, a lot of sabermetric concepts, a lot of numbers involved here. And, obviously it's a little bit easier in print form, like my daily picks and tips piece. But, as far as the show goes here, maybe you'd have to listen back through it twice, something like that. So please get on the list for the Bettor's Box notes. I think it's a very good idea. We got, I think, about 150 or 175 people on it here so far for this season. So if you want to be one of them, Adam at BangTheBook.com, the way to get a hold of me. All right, so I'm going to go with the traditional format here for our listeners that are carryovers from previous seasons. Thank you so much for being here. If you're a new listener, whether you found me this week or found Bang the Book Radio over the course of the season, very, very happy to have you here with us. Typically, my format on Thursdays, I'm going to go beyond the box score, talk about some things that, maybe don't show up in a prominent way for some recent results, or maybe talk about some statistical outliers, something like that. Just a lot of general information there in the Beyond the Box Score segment. I always go down the lines and look at line moves from the previous day, or the days in between shows, I guess I would say. So, for Monday, I'll talk about line moves over the weekend. For Thursday, I'll talk about line moves from Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. With this being opening day, obviously, not a whole lot to talk about from a line movement standpoint, but I'll touch on the line moves that we have seen here for Thursday, and also tell you about where you can look for line moves on a daily basis in the MLB betting market. Then I'll give you my pick for that day's games. Sometimes we get deep in the season and maybe we only have 5 or 6 games on a Monday or a Thursday because those are getaway days. Sometimes at that point it's a little bit tough to make a pick, but not today with everybody in action for opening day. Then I always preview the week or the weekend ahead, looking at pitching matchups, maybe some, rare situational spots, looking at just different things that you want to keep in mind, maybe some series price stuff, things of that sort. So there's sort of a look ahead to finish out each of these segments. And then when I do the Monday shows, we'll open with the Monday mailbag. So if you have questions, Adam at BangTheBook.com or Skating Tripods. Once we get through the weekend here, going to that April 1st show, we'll have a Monday mailbag before digging into all of the regular Bettor's Box concepts. All right, so we start with a look beyond the box score here, and what I thought would be a good idea on this first edition of the show, because we don't have much outside of the 2 games that were played over in Tokyo last week between the Mariners and the Athletics, I thought it would be a good idea to discuss a lot of the sabermetric stats that I'm going to talk about here on the Bettor's Box over the course of the season, and then I'm also going to be writing about in my picks and tips piece over at BangTheBook.com. So we'll start with one of the most obvious ones that I will discuss at length course of the season here, relative to line moves, relative to looking for positive and negative regression, ERA, FIP, and XFIP. We all know what ERA is, the metric that's been around, since Moses was parting the Red Sea. FIP and XFIP, newer to that party in terms of run metrics. ERA encompasses a lot of things that a pitcher has nothing to do with. FIP and XFIP are statistics based on what pitchers can control, or at least what they can control in theory, which would be strikeouts, walks, home runs, and hit by pitches. So those are your 4 components of FIP, fielding independent pitching. Now, XFIP is those 4 components, but with home runs regress to a league average home run to fly ball ratio, which last year for starting pitchers was 12.7%. So however many fly balls a pitcher allowed, you assume that 12.7% of them went for home runs. And then that's how XFIP comes together when you factor in strikeouts, walks, pitches into the equation as well. So what we generally see here is that ERA will encompass some of those luck factors. It also encompasses how good or how bad your defense is. FIP and XFIP are, the thought process behind them would be that they are statistics that show the true talent level of a pitcher from a run metric standpoint, like ERA. So that's the thought process behind FIP and XFIP. And the reason why, when you have a pitcher with a high ERA and a low FIP or a low XFIP, the expectation is that he will get better because his true talent level is better than what his ERA is. Similarly, a low ERA with a high FIP and a high XFIP, the expectation would be that that guy's ERA would gradually regress towards the FIP and XFIP because his true talent level isn't where his ERA is. So that's why we see a lot of line moves predicated on this. That's why we see so much conversation about ERA and FIP and XFIP discrepancies, because the idea here is that everything will kind of regress to a certain range, regress to a mean, which is why a lot of those line moves do take place. I'll talk about them in practice here when we get to the down the line segment in a few minutes. WOBA, weighted on base average. This is my favorite offensive statistic. When you talk about on base percentage, walks count the same as home runs, singles count the same as triples. That makes no sense to me. It's an archaic statistic. Now, of course, obviously with the Moneyball, the rise of Moneyball in the late 90s and early 2000s, on base percentage got very, very important. Well, for me, I've graduated to weighted on base average. What weighted on base average does is it takes those outcomes and assigns a run value to them. And the WOBA run values do change on a yearly basis, based on the different run environment that's out there. Walk doesn't count the same as a single. Because when you think about a single, guys can go first to third, second to home. With a walk, you're only advancing one base. So the run value for a single is higher than for a walk. And then obviously a double has a higher run value than a single, triple has a higher run value than a double, and a home run has a higher run value than a triple. So weighted on base average incorporates the idea that not all hits, not all ways of reaching base are created equal, which is exactly correct. So this is a statistic that makes a lot of sense to me. It's one I will use a lot when it comes to, pitchers and their WOBA against, and obviously one I'll use a lot when it comes to hitters as well. So weighted on base average, WOBA, lowercase w, capital OBA, is WOBA. Again, weighted on base average, where it differentiates between the different positive outcomes for a hitter, whereas on base percentage, everything counts the same. Even slugging percentage is a better barometer because it's total bases divided by at-bats. So it does weight home runs and triples, doesn't factor walks into the equation. So weighted on base average, my favorite statistic, a lot more descriptive, a lot more detailed than slugging percentage or OPS or something like that. Another one is WRC plus, weighted runs created plus. A lot of times I look at this, from a team standpoint more so than an individual standpoint. But weighted runs created plus is runs created adjusted to the league and park factor, and the plus sets a baseline for league average. So a league average WRC plus is 100. That is your baseline. That is your exactly average number. So a guy with a 110 WRC plus is 10% above league average offensively when you account for the league and the park factor and all those types of things. Obviously, if you're a 90 WRC plus, you're 10% below league average. So a lot of times I look at this from a team standpoint to see, how much better than league average a team is, particularly in a certain split, like maybe with runners in scoring position, something like that, to see if it's a team that is maybe having a lot of cluster luck, maybe having some outliers, maybe just doing very well in those high leverage situations. Maybe that comes back to the pack a little bit. So WRC plus, another statistic that I use, not to the degree of WOBA, but it is one that is part of my handicapping toolbox here. Another thing that I've really used a lot over the last 2.5 years, now that StatCast is out there and BaseballSavant.com, one of my favorite baseball websites, exit velocity. I look a lot at exit velocity. I look a lot at exit velocities in certain splits. I look a lot at, performance on exit velocity. It's one of those things that's very important because, again, one of the things about sabermetrics, it's something that a lot of people have a problem wrapping their heads around. But the best way I can describe it is that a lot of these sabermetric statistics back up what you see with the eye test. But the difference is they quantify what you're seeing, how much it actually affects a team, how much it actually affects an individual. So that's why I love sabermetrics, because they back up, they reinforce what we're already seeing. You can say, Melky Cabrera is a terrible outfielder in right field. Everybody can see that. That's not something that's hiding behind the curtain or anything like that. But what some of these sabermetric statistics can do is quantify just how much he's hurting the team by being bad in the outfield. You're going to look at a lot of relievers and starting pitchers and say, man, guys really hit the ball hard off of him. They probably do. The exit velocity metrics and then the splits with WOBA or batting average or something like that will do is that they will quantify what that hard contact means. And then, of course, we can look at it and say, well, he's getting lucky on his hard contact. He's getting a little bit unlucky relative to league average on his hard contact. So exit velocity has gotten very, very important for me, especially because as we've gotten more saber-minded individuals out there in the betting market, a lot of edges have gone away. It used to be you'd get a ton of closing line value just blindly doing the ERA and xFIP thing, and you would see how it all plays out. Well, maybe that's incorporated in the line a little bit more, but also with the way that these lines move, if you're not there to hit the openers, you're losing equity with that ERA and xFIP discrepancy that I talked about a couple of minutes ago. But when it comes to exit velocity, you can find those guys with low ERAs and high xFIPs that are more sustainable. Or you could find a guy, the expectation for a lot of people is that regression is going to happen no matter what. If you're a guy with a high ERA and a lower FIP and a lower xFIP, but you're allowing a ton of hard contact, why would your numbers get better? Why would you have more success if guys are still hitting the ball hard off of you? When you look at exit velocity, last year, one of the things I did a running breakdown week after week of how teams were doing offensively on batted balls of 95 plus miles per hour and exit velocity to look for outliers, to look for teams that were getting a little bit too lucky on those batted balls or teams that were getting a little bit unlucky on those batted balls. Well, last year, if you had a batted ball of 95 plus miles per hour, you, on average, batted 525. So batted balls in play of 95 plus miles per hour, you got to hit more than 50% of the time. You got to hit 52.5% of the time. From a WOBA standpoint, weighted on base average, you had a WOBA of 653. That again on batted balls of 95 plus miles per hour. We take that down to 93 plus miles per hour. The batting average drops to 494. The WOBA drops to 605. We take it down another notch to 91 plus miles per hour. Batting average goes down to 467. WOBA 565. Now, if you talk about any contact 90 miles per hour or below, which is a very big range, you'll have batted balls that are 40 or 50 miles per hour, the little dribblers out in front of the plate. You'll have soft ground balls, pop-ups, stuff like that. Very, very big range. But overall, 90 miles per hour or below an average exit velocity, hitters batted 198 with a 184 WOBA. So as you progressively go down in exit velocity, offense goes down. Batting average success goes down. WOBA goes down. Guys aren't driving the baseball for those doubles, triples, and home runs. Now, of course, as you gradually increase exit velocity, teams and hitters have a lot more success. So the pitchers that can limit hard contact can have a lot of success. And that's something I've had a lot of success with, because you'll see a lot of these low ERA, high xFIP guys that the market bets against. Well, I wait for those moves and come back in on those guys if I like their exit velocity metrics, if I think there's some sustainability to what they're doing. Now, if I go out there and I see a guy with a low ERA and a high xFIP and his average exit velocity is 90 miles per hour, well, that's a problem. That's a guy who probably is going to regress. So I think exit velocity is something that's kind of untapped out there in the market. I don't think a lot of quant people and modelers are really looking into it. So I feel like that's a strength that I have here, something that I can provide a different perspective on as we go throughout the season, because, again, this is an obvious concept that we're simply quantifying. Hitting the ball hard is good. Not hitting the ball hard is bad. It's a simple thing, but when you start to add context, you start to add some sort of evaluation to it, that's when it really becomes a very useful thing for you. So, again, I've been using that a lot more here. It's something I will talk about a lot in my picks and tips piece at BangTheBook.com and also here on the Bettor's Box. So I definitely want to make sure that you were familiar with it here right away at the start of the season. Defensive runs saved, DRS, UZR, ultimate zone rating. We really don't have a lot of great defensive metrics out there in Major League Baseball right now. Some of the StatCast stuff is pretty good. Sprint speed, outs above average, stuff like that. But the predominantly accepted defensive evaluation methods are very flawed. Now, I do think defensive runs saved is a pretty decent metric. It's a +1, -1 system. It's done by hand, basically taking into account batted ball data, the area in which the batted ball was hit, the distance it was hit, and then what happens is a computer program takes into account all of the plays in that area. Let's say it's an out 80% of the time. Well, if you make that catch, it's 0.2 defensive runs saved. If you don't make that catch, it would be -0.8 defensive runs saved. And again, it's a plus-minus system where they round up or round down. I think defensive runs saved does have some value, does have some importance. And obviously, too, you talk about ERA and the luck factors and the defenses that are involved. Well, if you've got a good defense and defensive runs saved, that pitcher probably going to have some more success than somebody who has a lesser defense. So you want to keep that in mind over the course of the season here as well. Just a handful of other statistics I want to bring to your attention. I use strikeout percentage and walk percentage. This is percentage of strikeouts against total batters faced, percentage of walks against total batters faced. I think these are better metrics than K per 9, BB per 9, or just looking at the raw counts of strikeouts and walks. So I will use strikeout percentage and walk percentage, both for pitchers and hitters, when I want to evaluate strikeouts and walks. Ground ball percentage, fly ball percentage, line drive percentage. Batted ball types stabilize very quickly. I think overall, I'm waiting till about 6 weeks in to transition from last year's numbers to this year's numbers, to where the sample size does make some sense. But for batted ball distribution, ground balls, fly balls, line drives, and then also strikeout percentage and walk percentage, those reach a point of significance and a point of stabilization early in the year. So those are metrics that we can rely on early on in the season. So you'll definitely want to keep that in mind. Finally, one other thing I like to look at, a couple other things I like to look at here, pitch usage and plate discipline metrics. I want to see what pitchers are doing. Are they maximizing their best pitches? If they've got a bad fastball, do they keep throwing it 55 or 60% of the time? That's a problem. If they have a good fastball and they're throwing it 55 or 60% of the time, that's okay. But we're seeing a lot of teams move away from throwing fastballs, a lot of pitchers learning cutters, more curveball usage, more slider usage. Those are things I look at progressively over the course of the season, because those are things that will help pitchers from a contact management standpoint, from a strikeout and walk standpoint, all that type of thing. So I keep up on that over the course of the season. Also, zone contact percentage, percentage of contact on pitches inside the strike zone. If you can get swings and misses on strikes, that increases your margin for error significantly. If a lot of your swings and misses are on pitches outside the zone, well, you need hitters to expand the zone. Sometimes that doesn't always happen. So zone contact percentage, Z-contact percentage, O swing percentage, percentage of swings on pitches outside the zone. Obviously, O contact percentage would be percentage of contact on pitches swung at outside the zone, swinging strike percentage, stuff like that, first pitch strike rate. These are all important things. And they will have value and equity from a matchup standpoint. If you've got a team that's very aggressive, strikes out a lot, and you have a pitcher that gets a lot of chases outside the zone, that's a good matchup for him. You've got a team that doesn't chase a lot outside the zone and a guy that doesn't have very good control metrics, that's probably not a good matchup for him. So we can use some matchup analysis data in that regard using pitch usage and the plate discipline metrics. Let's go down the lines here. Let's talk about some line moves for opening day. A lot of these will be recurring themes. You can get out in front of these line moves here as we go throughout the course of the season. The Cardinals and the Brewers with a line move here today. Miles Mikolas flipped into the favorite for the Cardinals, going up against Jhoulys Chacin. Then now this one's actually kind of flipped back the other way. So some differing opinions here on this Cardinals versus Brewers game, and you can certainly understand why. Miles Mikolas, 285-ish ERA, FIP up in the 380 range, a guy that people are looking for some negative regression from. Same thing for Jhoulys Chacin, 350 ERA, 447 xFIP last year. A lot of guys for the Brewers last season outperformed their FIPs and xFIPs because of their focus on contact. That talks about what I was discussing in the previous bit there in terms of exit velocity. But the quant crowd, the modeling crowd, the people that maybe don't go to that next level, they're just going to blindly fade those types of guys with those low ERA and high xFIP marks. So again, you're going to see this a lot in the line moves I talk about today and a lot during this down the line segment over the course of the year. So it gives you the opportunity, even though I don't post my article until the morning, gives you the opportunity to get out in front of the overnights, then decide if you want to keep that bet, if you want to arbitrage that bet, or if you just want to buy out of it completely. So you can look to get in front of these line moves. These happen like clockwork. It's been this way for the last 3 or 4 years. So, you're not going to see anything new when it comes to these ERA and xFIP discrepancies. If you're someone who's been following the market for a long time, if you're somebody new to the market, maybe new to analytics, go to Fangraphs, go to the probable pitchers page, look for guys with an ERA to xFIP discrepancy, and that's going to tell you where the line's going to move. It's almost as simple as that. Nothing is a lock in this business by any means, but when you talk about big ERA and xFIP splits, you will see line moves on those games, probably 80 to 85% of the time this season. Speaking of which, we had a line move in the Rockies versus Marlins game. The Marlins, not much expected from them here this season, but yet this line's come down at Marlins Park. Colorado was in the minus 150 range at some places on the open, now down in the minus 135 range. That's Kyle Freeland. Kyle Freeland, 285 ERA, 422 xFIP. Again, you're going to see these throughout the season. It's going to be a very recurring theme. I'm going to sound like a broken record. I'm going to beat a dead horse, but these are important things because you want to get as much equity in that line, as much closing line value as you possibly can. Now, I will talk about Kyle Freeland a little bit more as we go forward, but again, you will see line moves looking to fade him here this season. The Astros and the Rays. This is one where we haven't seen too much line movement on the side, but on the total, we are seeing some activity. Total of 6.5 here has been bet up to minus 125. Probably going to see some stray sevens out there this afternoon as well. Justin Verlander coming off of a career year in his mid-30s. Blake Snell coming off of a Cy Young winning season with an 88% left on base percentage last year. Stranded an inordinately high number of runners. Had a good strikeout rate, but got very fortunate with those batted balls in high leverage situations and with the timing of strikeouts. So he's a guy you would expect to regress from a left on base percentage standpoint. Left on base means is obviously ending an inning with runners on base. Well, if you're going to regress there, what does that mean? It means those runners are going to score. So we're seeing that total go up a little bit, at least from a juice standpoint. And I do think that we probably see some sevens out there in the marketplace before that game goes off. Seeing money come in against the Indians, a lot of things going on with the Indians right now. Nobody believes in the outfield. I think it's a little bit better than people are giving it credit for. Francisco Lindor is out. Jose Ramirez hobbled. No Jason Kipnis. There's just a lot of things going wrong for the Indians right now. Nobody really likes the bullpen all that much. The Twins, going to be a popular team, good offensive team. And also, I'll talk about this here in a second, but Jose Barrios last year Swinging strike rate up to 11.2%, career high strikeout percentage, potential breakout star for this season in Jose Barrios for the Twins. Finally, one more line move here during this down the line segment. This is a fade of Jon Lester. Cubs versus Rangers game. Jon Lester last year, 3.32 ERA, 4.43 xFIP, 80.3% left on base percentage. Those are all the hallmarks. Those are all the things that you look for. And also, too, kind of a random note, but Jon Lester allowed a 374 weighted on base average to left-handed hitters last year. I kind of looked at the game, from a surface level standpoint and thought, well, Jon Lester's a lefty going up against a lefty-dependent lineup. Lefties actually hit him pretty well last year. So more of a method to the madness here for that line move with people backing the Rangers tonight against the Chicago Cubs. Again, ERA to xFIP discrepancies, left on base percentage outliers. League average left on base percentage was 72 or 73% last year, in that range for starters. So anybody in the 60s or the 65 range, money coming in on them. Anybody in the 80 to 85% range, money coming in against them. You can read these line moves like clockwork. That's very important to always get as much equity as possible out of that line and get some closing line value whenever possible. Got a betting tip for you here. The listener reminded me of this actually via email. And again, you can email me, adam@bangthebook.com, with any baseball questions or to get on the Bettor's Box notes contact list. Chalky teams. A lot of people are allergic to chalk. A lot of people do not want to lay big money line prices in Major League Baseball or the NHL. They don't want to take big money line prices on any of the spread sports. When you look at Major League Baseball here, and I'm curious to see when this trend does change, because there will be more parity in the league here sometime very soon. When you look at the last really 5 seasons, but I've only grabbed the sample size of the last 4 seasons here this morning, favorites of minus 181 or higher. So basically anything, we could group minus 180 in there, but minus 181 or higher. Here are the numbers from the Killer Sports database. Last year, favorites at minus 181 or higher, 436 and 156, 73.6%. Average line minus 228.7. That's a 69.58% implied probability on that line. So that's your break-even rate, 69.58%. $100 bettors were up $9,000 on favorites of minus 181 or higher last year. Now, again, I know it's hard to lay chalk. It is a difficult thing to do, but favorites cast at a very high rate last year, especially very chalky favorites, minus 181 or higher, high enough to beat the break-even rate on the average line. Again, $100 bettors up $9,000 on minus 181 or higher favorites. So basically, don't be allergic to chalk. 2017, 301 and 111, 73.1%. Average line 224.8. Break-even percentage, implied probability 69.21%. $100 bettors up just under $6,000 in 2017. 2016, 294 and 121, 70.8%. Average line minus 220.2. Break-even rate 68.77%. $100 bettors up right around 3,100 there. And then 2015, 178 and 65, 73.3%. Average line 214.3. Break-even rate 68.18%. $100 bettors up just about $4,000 in 2015. But a few things to notice here. First of all, in 2015, we only had 243 games with a favorite of minus 181 or higher. In 2018, we had 592 games with a favorite of minus 181 or higher. So that speaks to the top-heavy nature of Major League Baseball right now, particularly in the American League. The National League a lot more balanced now with 4 contenders in the East, 5 in the Central. So we probably won't see as many big favorites here this season. But again, look at the number of games and also look at the average line in those games. Minus 214.3 in 2015, minus 228.7 in 2018. So a lot more heavy favorites. You're paying more of a premium for them, and yet they're still cashing at a very high rate. So don't be allergic to chalk this season. A lot of times I won't talk about the very chalky games in my picks and tips piece because I know a lot of people kind of have a mental block when it comes to taking those big favorite prices, but they have been very profitable for favorites minus 181 or higher. Okay, if you want to get on the notes and have these right in front of you, Adam at BangTheBook.com. Let's give you my pick here for Thursday night, for opening day. That will be the Minnesota Twins going to go against my Cleveland Indians here tonight. I've got some concerns about Corey Kluber. Declining fastball velocity, yet he's throwing the fastball more. Decreased curveball usage last season, more of a pitch-to-contact approach. The strikeout rate came down. The fastball command has never been great. He's given up a lot of home runs on the fastball over his last 3 or 4 years. And look, an elite-level pitcher, Cy Young contender pretty much year in and year out. But using the fastball more makes me wonder if there's some sort of health concern there, something like that. He's a guy I'm going to look to play against a little bit this season. But in particular here in this spot, April has not been kind to Corey Kluber, really March or April. From 2014 to 2017, ERA is in the 4.14 to 4.24 range. So, again, ERA open to a lot of noise in a very small sample. But April's never really been his thing. He's kind of been a little bit of a slow starter. Last year, he wasn't. Last year, he was phenomenal in the months of March and April. I talked about this in my picks and tips piece. He threw 45 1/3 innings last year in March and April. That can't happen again because he was burned out by September, didn't pitch all that well in his playoff start either. So that was one of those things where the workload in April caught up with him in September. So I would expect the Indians to be a little bit more cautious here this time around with Kluber, who usually averages around 34 innings for March and April, had 45 last year. Not to say they're going to cut him off at the knees or anything, if his pitch count is relatively low. But I just have some concerns about Corey Kluber, obviously concerns about the Indians without Francisco Lindor, with Jose Ramirez still hobbled from fouling that ball off his leg, no Jason Kipnis. They've got some things to figure out in the outfield here. They got some things to figure out in the bullpen. And Jose Barrios, again, I think he's got a chance to be a breakout star this year. I really, truly do. That swinging strike rate went up. The walk rate went, kind of stayed where it was. But, he also had better fortunes on balls in play, did better from an exit velocity standpoint. They've gone all in on analytics. And when teams go all in on analytics, and I'll talk about this as we go throughout the season here, the pitching gains come first because you can set up these pitching plans, you can change usage patterns, all that type of thing. When it comes to hitting, you can give guys different scouting reports, you can work on hitting mechanics and all that. There's more of a, for lack of a better term, more of a talent factor when it comes to hitting the baseball. When it comes to pitching, you can do things that make it harder on the hitters. And when teams go this analytics route, the pitching side usually gets the most help early in the process. So with Barrios having the higher swinging strike rate, higher curveball usage, a guy that's doing a lot of things that are going to be really positive for him and for his numbers this season. The Twins have a very good offense. I'm buying stock in Barrios. The bullpen is good enough. Give me the Twins today. You find them in the minus 101 range. That line probably will continue to move once we see the lineups come out here for today. But for right now, Twins around even money, my pick for Thursday night. All right, so what are we watching for this weekend? Well, really, this is a point to make over the next 2-3 weeks. Starters aren't going to work as deep into games. They're going to have shorter appearances. Teams want to protect their arms. Managers don't want to lose their jobs for getting somebody hurt. Starters will probably go 85 or 90 pitches, 5 or 6 innings. Guys will start to work deeper into games once we get later in the month of April and then on into May. Early on, guys will be limited, which means a lot of bullpen usage. Now, managers will not shy away from back-to-backs and 3 and 4s. Relievers probably want them, truthfully, to get into the rhythms of the season. But keep bullpen usage in mind, and also keep in mind that when you're handicapping these games, and these lines are generally predicated on the starting pitchers aren't going to have as much of an impact, as they would in the middle of the season or something like that. And really, starting pitchers have had less and less impact as they've gotten fewer and fewer innings here over the last few years. But it's especially true at this time of the year when guys are still trying to build their arms up. So keep that in mind, that starters will have much shorter appearances on average in March and April than they will throughout May, June, July, August, and September. So it brings a lot of bullpen usage into the equation. Indians and Twins, the first series I want to look at here. You've got the Indians rotation, elite, best in baseball, up against that Twins lineup, which should be much improved with Nelson Cruz, Marwin Gonzalez, Jonathan Scope. A lot of people like Max Kepler as a breakout guy. Good series, good barometer, good litmus test here for specifically the Twins. The Indians have been the top dog here in this division for the last several years. They've got some concerns right now with the injuries, with Lindor being out, with figuring out the outfield and the bullpen. I think the Twins need to smell blood in the water here. I think they need to get off to a good start in this series. You've got that Kluber-Barrios game here tonight where I do like the Twins. Trevor Bauer, Jake Odorizzi coming up on Saturday, the weather postponement day, on Friday if they needed to use that. Looks like the weather's going to be good in Minnesota today, but they're off on Friday. Then they'll play Saturday and Sunday. So Bauer and Odorizzi Saturday, Carlos Carrasco, Michael Pineda on Sunday. Michael Pineda will get a lot of steam this year. There will be a lot of line moves on Michael Pineda and the Twins. High ERA, low xFIP guy. He's done it for 3 or 4 years now. Elite strikeout to walk rates, bad command. Just gives up too many home runs, lives in the middle of the plate too much. High BABIPs in the 330, 320 range. I don't like the command profile, so I won't be one of those people backing Pineda. But if you want closing line value or to do some arbitrage and some scalping, you want to look at Michael Pineda, betting the overnights, and then decide if you want to come back in on the other side. But, an interesting series here. Again, I think a good barometer for the Twins right out of the gate. Rocco Baldelli, the new manager, would certainly like to hit the ground running. They'd certainly like to see some of the changes take hold with the hire of Wes Johnson as the pitching coach. So I think the Twins, really interesting team early on in the season here, and the start they get off to will dictate how much of a chance they have in the Central, because right now is the biggest time of vulnerability for the Indians. While the starters are still getting stretched out, team's second-best player is out, this is where, if you're the Twins, you want to try to bank some wins and try to put yourself in a favorable position. So I think that they should hit the ground running here at the start of the season, and especially in this series. I don't know if the Indians have that in them. They've been a slow-starting team most years. They've been a very good second-half team most years. So I think it's a really interesting spot here for the Indians. And, look, I wouldn't mind taking a Twin Series price here right out of the gate for this opening round in the Central Division. Speaking of Central Divisions, we go to the NL Central here. The Pirates and the Reds. Good one today between Jameson Taillon and Luis Castillo. Head on over to BangTheBook.com. Check out my picks and tips piece for my thoughts on that pitching matchup. Trevor Williams and Sonny Gray coming up in the second game here. I believe that's on Saturday. I believe they've got the postponement day factored in there as well. Trevor Williams, low ERA, high xFIP guy. Money will come in against him probably in every start he makes this year. But he's a contact management wizard. Unsustainable second half. He will regress in the, relative to his second half. But he's a contact management guy to where I believe in him a little bit more than the market does. Maybe I'll wait it out and get some value closer to first pitch on him in some of his starts. But that will be a guy where we will see those line moves without a shadow of a doubt. And then Joe Musgrove and Tanner Roark on Sunday in the series finale. Look, new look Reds team, new offense. 60% of the rotation's been redone. 2 of those guys are getting the starts in this series. Alex Wood on the shelf right now. But the same look Pirates. The Pirates didn't do a whole lot to excite people. So I sort of wonder here in this series if we see the Reds get preferential treatment in the betting market. I know they will tomorrow, or Saturday, with that Trevor Williams start. But what about Sunday? In that Musgrove versus Roark game, Tanner Roark, an average type of guy. I think Joe Musgrove can be slightly above average. Will the Reds take money in that spot just because of the court of public perception? I think it'll be interesting to watch with the Reds here in this series and also as we move forward. How about the Mets and Nationals? You want to talk about pitching porn? Oh, man. You can't have enough lube if you love pitching for this series. Just to sit on the couch, get a glass of wine, enjoy, just turn on that MLB.TV subscription. Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer today. Noah Syndergaard, Steven Strasburg in the second game. Zach Wheeler, Patrick Corbin in the third game. Again, Friday off for those 2 teams with the concerns about weather basically everywhere in the month of March. But, man, deGrom and Scherzer, you talk about coming out of the gate early. Reigning Cy Young against Scherzer, who's got a couple of them. Then you've got Thor and Strasburg, who when he's healthy, he's outstanding. And then Wheeler, who really came back into his own last year. Corbin, the prized acquisition for the Nationals. What a series. What a pitching series here at Nationals Park this weekend. New look offense for the Mets. Very balanced, very deep offense for the Nationals. Tough assignments here for these starters early on in the season, but also pitchers are ahead of the hitters. So for the hitters, you don't really love seeing deGrom, Syndergaard, and Wheeler in your first 3 games, or Scherzer, Strasburg, and Corbin in your first 3 games. Not great for either one of these lineups. maybe it has some longer-ranging impact in the month of April as they try to get in the swing of things, facing guys that aren't elite, facing guys that are more in the realm of average. Finally, one more serious look at here, also in the National League East, the Braves and the Phillies. Julio Teheran, Aaron Nola, one of the biggest lines on the board here for today. Obviously, the Baltimore-New York line out of control, but Nola getting a lot of love in the opening line there for the Phillies in that one against Teheran. Then you have Bryce Wilson, a highly thought-of prospect. He'll go up against Nick Pivetta, who's a big ERA xFIP guy. A lot of people talking about a breakout season for Nick Pivetta. He'll get that bump from being talked about at The Athletic and Fangraphs and all that. So casual bettors going to play on him, the quant crowd going to play on him with that ERA xFIP discrepancy. It'll be a fairly big line against an unknown in Bryce Wilson, but that will be a line that does move up for that game coming up probably on Saturday, probably another one of those games with that delay day put into the schedule. Then finally, Kyle Wright and Jake Arrieta on Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN. I will almost always, look at the series with Sunday Night Baseball for the weekend because we can get some situational spots coming out of that late game. Here, for example, the Braves turn around and play their home opener against the Chicago Cubs on Monday. The Phillies are off on Monday. So the Braves play Sunday Night Baseball. They're not quite into the rhythms of the season yet. You've been out in spring training, getting up early, playing nothing but day games. Now you start to play some night games. Could be a little bit of a shock to the system for the Braves in that game. So maybe we look to go against them on Monday. We'll have to see what the pitching matchups look like there. But I always talk about the Sunday Night Baseball spot just to see if there is anything from a situational standpoint that we can look to take advantage of. So I know I talked about a lot here on today's show. Usually the notes are going to be more team-specific, but I want to give you more of an overview here for the first episode of the season. Again, if you want the Bettor's Box notes, Adam at BangTheBook.com is the place where you are going to get them. Again, look for those line moves, ERA and xFIP, left on base percentage, and you know what? Just if you've done a lot of research or if you've read my research, we got to trust it at this time of the year. We're still waiting to get sample sizes of statistics to have a better idea of these players and of these teams. So we've got to trust this stuff early on in the year. The more data we get, the better off we'll be. I like to keep it a little bit lighter in March and April in terms of exposure and in terms of plays, just while we try to feel everything out, figure out what teams are working with, what adjustments have been made, all that type of thing. So we're all excited about the start of the season, all excited about opening day, but don't go out there and start shoving that bankroll. While we've got 162 games, I believe 184 days of the Major League Baseball season. So if you want the Bettor's Box notes, Adam at BangTheBook.com. Make sure you check out tomorrow's edition of Bang the Book Radio. Going to chat with Kyle Hunter of HunterSportsPicks.com about the Friday night Sweet 16 games and also take a look at the Elite Eight. So we'll have Kyle on Friday. Next Monday, the Bettor's Box. Next Tuesday, I think we're going to talk with Kyle Hunter next Tuesday. But, I'll come up with a better schedule here as we get closer to it. But I'll do the Bettor's Box Monday and Thursday from this point forward. Then, of course, including the Monday mailbag with the Monday shows. So hopefully you enjoyed this, everybody. If you're new to the show, thank you for joining me. If you're a repeat customer to the show, thank you so much for being back. You guys and girls are the reason why I have this platform, why I'm able to do this. Greatly appreciate your support, your feedback, getting on the mailing list, sending me questions, and obviously listening to all of our Bang the Book radio content, including the Bettor's Box. So thank you so much. Happy opening day, everybody. And remember that you will never strike out when you're in the Bettor's Box.